All right, we are live. It's been about a month since I've done one of these live Q&As, so I thought it was about time for another one, as I usually do with these Q&As. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat. I'll start off with a few questions from a post I made a while back, and we'll use that to get going. And if you guys have questions about pretty much anything as it has to do with investing, my personal life, anything that I can answer, I will try to. If I don't know something, of course, I'll let you know. And yeah, just let me know what you guys want to talk about. But for now, I'll start off with the questions I have from this post from a while back, and we'll use that to get us going. I made this post asking for questions. If you guys want to see these posts, be sure to subscribe, and then you'll get a notification when I make posts like these. But let's see. This picture is actually from downtown Chicago, in the heart of the Loop, which is like the central business district. So this should be primo real estate, but right now retail is at like 26% vacancy in Chicago downtown, which is nuts. I think historically it's much closer to like 10 to 15%. So it is not seeing very good times right now. But anyways, it's a little outdated now that it's in November. This portion of the building is back to vacant. This is right along my commute. I get off this train stop usually before I head on to the office downtown when I go in. Anyways, our man Frank, one of the Punch Card investing crew members, asks for an elevator pitch for Turtle Beach. Are there any other gaming companies you're interested in? So Turtle Beach is one of my larger stock holdings. I think it's the second or third largest I have. I think third largest at the moment. And I recently actually put out a fairly comprehensive look into the company and kind of the main thesis I have for it. So if you guys want to check that out, go ahead and do that. But to summarize, I don't like the term elevator pitch for a stock because I don't want it to sound like I'm selling something, because ultimately beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And I think maybe the better way to word it is my investment thesis behind it, why I've invested in it for my own personal preference. But anyways, the general thesis I'm running off of is that Turtle Beach is has a really clean balance sheet, other than the fact they've been diluting shareholders a good bit over the past decade. But otherwise, good cash flow, no long-term debt really to worry about at all compared to their cash pile. They're making a lot of acquisitions, or not really a lot, but they're focusing on acquisitions outside of the gaming headphone space, which is their sort of bread and butter that they've thrived on over the past couple decades. They're trying to build tertiary businesses around that within the PC and also within the console space still, but they're focusing a lot of effort on building into the PC space, which I am very supportive of. So I think that they're heading in the right direction towards growth while they maintain their solid cash flows in the console space. So that's kind of the elevator pitch there, I guess if you want to call it that. I think, I don't want to call it super overpriced, but depending on your required return, it could be a pretty viable option, I think, especially if you're interested and very bullish on the gaming sector. I haven't really seen any other gaming companies, to get to your other question, Frank, that I'm really interested in. A lot of them run very expensive, like at least per my own preference. Obviously, do your own due diligence, and your required return might be very different than mine. Your risk tolerance might be different too. But companies like Activision Blizzard seem pretty expensive, but even though they have pretty rock solid brands, it doesn't mean I want to pay way up for it and then I'm sacrificing potential return just to get that sort of safety, if you want to call it that. So I don't want to do that. What's another one? I know, Frank, you yourself have done quite a bit of due diligence on Nintendo. That'd be kind of in a similar boat. Not to the same level as like an Activision, but not exactly super cheap. Long-term growth prospects are a little shaky. It'll kind of depend, at least at current prices. So I don't know. There hasn't really been one that's really caught my eye. I've taken a quick look at Corsair Gaming, which is more on the PC side, accessories. It's not something that really, at least at current prices, I haven't really checked in a while to see if maybe it's a good deal now. But that's kind of in a similar sort of space as Turtle Beach, I would guess, at least where their growth trajectories are going. And if I had to pick between Corsair and Turtle Beach, I'll go with Turtle Beach at the moment. Things could always change. So yeah, that's I'd say next on the list. If I was to buy another gaming company, probably be something like a Corsair, but it would probably have to come down quite a bit in price for me to really get interested. But you can say that about a ton of stocks, especially right now. So thank you for the question, Frank. Hopefully that answers it. Tom, another Punch Card Investing crew member. They're all here today. Once you inevitably crush your current net worth and passive income goals, do you have an idea of where you'd like to get to next? Yes, I have some idea, and I appreciate the inevitability of crushing the goals. You have to believe that you're going to actually succeed in your goals. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? If you don't think you can succeed, then you're not going to try hard. But then again, I guess if you are overly confident that you will succeed without effort, then it's not very productive either. But anyways, that's beside the point. So my current net worth goals, I should say the highest priority goal right now is the one I'm documenting on this channel, which is trying to build a $1 million net worth by the time I'm 30, currently 24, I'll be 25 in April. And then also a $30,000 per year passive income. However, that's going to be inflation adjusted, I'm sure, in the coming years as we continue to pump new money into the system and keep taking out new debt, the government, that is, the governments throughout the world, really. So as long as that keeps going, maybe that 30,000 number will be closer to 40 or 50 by the time I really get to it. But that's the general goal. Basically, I want to reach basic financial freedom, where my expenses would be covered by my investment income, and then I would have a decent, quote unquote, moat of having a decent amount of liquidity through my net worth, whether that be through real estate, through stocks, through all the investments I'm documenting on the channel in pretty great detail. So, so that's what I'm going for now. And the reason I'm doing that isn't, the reason I'm focusing on that first, yeah, sure, $40,000 per year. Is that really something to get super excited about? I think so. And that's really because of the safety it provides. I'm really trying to build my own safety net. A lot of people in their careers, they rely on other people to build their safety net for them. In many cases, people pay into a pension system. And in that case, the government is the third party you have to worry about taking care of your retirement. And in a similar boat, Social Security in the US, people worry about, they have to rely on the government to subsidize a large part of their retirement through something like Social Security and many other state benefits too. Many people might rely on unemployment insurance as well. If they lose a job, they'll just be like, don't worry, the government's got me covered. I don't want to be in that position. So I want to make sure that I build enough of an income stream, multiple income streams, to where if I were to lose my job or had to cut back on hours for whatever reason, especially by the time I have kids, if maybe parenting, it turns out to be a lot harder. Maybe my kid has some sort of disability or something where I have to really put a lot of time, more time than I might have expected towards it. Not that I'm trying to cut corners parenting. Of course, it's something I'm looking forward to for sure. And that's a big reason I want to do it by the time I'm 30, because by then I expect to be a dad at some point. So I want to be sure that we have enough of a safety net to where if I needed to stop working for some time or just have some flexibility. That's really all it's about. It's not necessarily that I completely despise everything I'm doing right now and I just want to go to the beach all day. Sure, that sounds pretty nice, but you're not really going to be able to do too much on $40,000 per year, although it certainly is a significant income and you could definitely live off of it, at least in the Midwest, maybe not in Los Angeles or something. But that's the initial goal. I'm really trying to build that safety net as quickly as possible. And then from there, I'll have a lot of flexibility, and not just on the career front, but also in types of risks I'm willing to take, because I know I'll have some sort of income to fall back on. So maybe I can throw more money into speculative ventures, whether that be other people's ventures, different alternative asset classes, my own businesses, stuff like that. I could be a lot more comfortable doing that sort of thing once I kind of have this baseline level set up. So that's the reason I'm doing that. So with that said, what comes after the current goal would be to try and fortify essentially the position we'd be in by the time we're financially independent. I say we, my wife and I, since this is a team effort. Right now she's in school, and I'm very excited for when she is out of school, because then we'll finally get to tap into the dual income with no kids routes for a little while and really catapult our financial situation in a much bigger way. At least that's what we're going for. So we're going to take advantage of that for sure before we have kids, which we do both want to do sooner rather than later. So take advantage of it for as long as we can. But it'll be fortifying It'll be expanding that passive income. It'll be maybe eliminating some debt. Maybe it will be, that's pretty much it. Building assets, eliminating debt, and just making the position stronger and more robust. And also, I'd be looking to diversify actually a bit more too into other jurisdictions, maybe outside of the US at some point, into other countries. Maybe I'd like to own a property in multiple countries at some point to have at least different options in the event that something really goes south, or I just want to be able to move for some better opportunity somewhere else if that happens to arise. So that's what I'm looking towards long term. But then also outside of kind of the investing front, or maybe pretty closely related to it, I really want to do some pretty serious charity work, and running a nonprofit would be fantastic. And it's kind of hard. I shouldn't say, well, it'd be a lot easier if you have the financial means to actually fund large portions of a nonprofit. And I'd be interested in something affecting affordable housing. Anything with ground up development would be awesome. I really want to do that, both on the for-profit and non-for-profit side. If that could logistically work, which might take a bit of time to figure out, but that's what I'm really looking towards in kind of we'll call it my 30s. That would be fantastic if I could devote a lot more of my time towards nonprofit work and building up a real estate company, maybe within the nonprofit, outside of the nonprofit. That would be really sweet. And then of course, there's always the chance that something like YouTube takes off, and I do enjoy doing this too. So being able to have a greater incentive, even greater than now, to build a substantial income online too, that would be a lot of fun, because creating content is something I'll always be doing. At least just a document, even if it's not super profitable. But it's cool seeing the steady growth on the channel and on my social media accounts. It's been really awesome. And I thank everyone for supporting me along the way there. So that was a bit of a rambly answer, I suppose. And then I guess super long term, I do want to have kind of along the nonprofit route. I want to be pretty substantially wealthier than I am now. And that would be a great way to make massive impact on issues that I really care about, affordable housing being one sort of thing. And yeah, that would be the ideal, just really being able to go get after it, all while being a loving father, of course, when that time comes to, which we're some years away, at least according to our plans right now, but plans always change. So that's kind of what's next. But right now it's full focus on building up our safety net, our personal safety net, reaching financial independence, so that we can have greater options in the future and take different risks after that. So good question, Tom. Let's get into the chat real quick. Microsoft, not to be forgotten in the gaming space, sure, but they run into the problem of many other companies, many of the same problems that other companies are running into now, which is that they're, I think, quite expensive. Even though they're a great company, great brand, there's a lot of these stocks out there that are fantastic businesses, but they're being sold at a premium because they're fantastic businesses. Everyone sees the same thing. So you just have to be really diligent and patient if you're really trying to have market-beating returns. At least that's my philosophy, and it's kind of the value investing philosophy that made famous by guys like Warren Buffett. It's granted, he has a few of those kind of great businesses that you could definitely argue are very expensive, Apple being one of them. It's not something that I'm really going for right now. Speaking of Warren Buffett, he's on kind of a different playing field, given that he has hundreds of billions of dollars to move around, whereas I do not. So I can go for those smaller opportunities that maybe can produce outsized percentage returns, because I don't have a lot of money that I have to place. So I can take advantage of that for a while I build up the safety net and go for financial independence. But yes, true. Microsoft is not to be forgotten in the gaming space, and who knows, maybe they'll acquire something like a Turtle Beach and someday, given that they have plenty of cash to move to. They're really like a hedge fund at this point. That's how I look at them. Matthew asks, how's the day job going? It is it's intense, but let's see, over the past couple months, so I'm a commercial real estate attorney at a large law firm, for those of you who aren't familiar. And it's an intense job for sure. But with that, compared to maybe a more lax job, if that's the right term. I'm learning quite a bit very quickly because I'm just putting in a lot of hours into many different transactions. Just in the past couple of months, I had 5 transactions. One of those transactions was 6 properties, so it was kind of like a 6-in-1 deal. So it's been really good for really getting caught up to speed on the real estate game, and also getting a very different perspective on kind of the requirements and different complications that you might face with a real estate transaction. Having bought a few properties myself already, I had some idea, but at the large commercial level, there's a lot of different complexities that go into it that I was vaguely familiar with, but really getting into it, it's been really good. And I've also gotten to know my team a lot better. We're coming into the office more, which helps on that front. And it's been good. It's intense. Like I said, it's a lot of hours, and mainly because I had a few transactions that I was getting through, and the whole team's pretty busy. So, and pretty much all law firms right now are dealing with staffing issues because after like the pandemic hit back in spring of 2020, a lot of big firms furloughed people or even cut people outright. And there's been kind of fallout from there, a lot of churning between firms right now, large firms at least. So people are scalping talent off each other, and there's a lot of churn going on right now, at least at the mid to senior level associates. It's kind of like the level before you reach partner at a lot of these big firms. So our firm is no different. Everyone is looking to hire kind of mid-level talent right now in the big space, the big law firm space. So that means it's a double-edged sword. That means that I have a lot more work to do, but it also means I'm getting to see a lot more complicated work than I might have seen before, which is great because now, a year from now, I'll have done a lot more complicated stuff. I'll be a lot more versatile, and I'll have just more skills that I can actually use and be a better attorney a year from now because I've kind of been forced into these good opportunities that have been struggles to learn, but that's kind of the whole point. You're trying to grow, and you got to do some struggling. And I just happen to do quite a bit very, very quickly, which I will definitely take, especially this early in my career. So to answer the question, it's been good, and I'll be continuing to truck along and getting better at what I'm doing. GC asks, here, let me take a sip of water before I read this long question. Been meaning to ask, have you? How did you guys start out? My wife and I assume you mean. Like when you went to university and took all that debt on, how did you save so much for your age? And how did you save your first deposit up? So this is, I'll take you back to when I was 18, which is when I met my now wife. Second weekend of college. That's when we met. Been together ever since, and that was back in 2015. 2015 is when we met. We're over 6 years now, which is pretty neat. And we've been married for 2 officially. So officially married. I consider. I like to think that we were married before we actually had a wedding, but whatever. We've been together for 6 years now. So I came from, we both came from, how do you say it? Safe middle class backgrounds, hardworking families who take care of their kids. Not that, anyways, they wanted the best for us. So I didn't have to come out of pocket on undergrad. However, we did for grad school. So I went to law school, and the only reason I did go to law school is because I got a full ride to it. Emily and my wife did not get a full ride to her program, but we were willing to take on all this debt that we now have of $150,000 or whatever it is now, because I didn't have a massive debt load already. So, and because we were sharing it at this point, really, her debt is my debt is really how I look at it and how we should look at it. That's the reason we're taking it on now. I've been working the whole time since I got out of undergrad, minus a few months here and there while I was taking the bar exam and switching into the law job. And I only took 3 years to do undergrad as well, so that saves some time and some costs. versus if I did a full 4 years, I don't know if I would have had to come out of pocket more there. So yeah, that's kind of how that kind of started. Right out of undergrad, even though I went to law school, I did law school at night. So I could work during the day, save up for our wedding mainly through that year, and also save up for my first deposit for a house, which with 5% down, you don't need much. And I bought a condo back in 2018 for $152,000 or $53,000, which I came out of pocket less than $20,000, and I put like 10 or 12% down. I eventually refinanced out of that loan, and now I have a HELOC on that, but that's kind of how I started. Basically, I started with, I hate saying I started with zero because I didn't. I started with a really advantageous position compared to a lot of people. But it's not like I had $100,000 out of undergrad to invest. I worked for, 5 months, and that was enough to, well beyond what I needed to put 5% down on a property. So in the U.S., at least, as a first-time home buyer, as long as your debt to income is decent, which can be hard out of school for sure, but if you really focus on making sure that your debt to income is decent, don't go to a massive overpriced school if you don't have to, which in most cases I would say you don't. I'm proof of that for law school. I went to a mid-tier school because I got a full ride, and I still ended up in a good position. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen to everyone, but if I got in and then went to like a top tier school where I would have paid, $200,000 for the degree, now all of a sudden I have to spend years of my salary just towards the student debt before I can do anything. And I'm in no better of a position than I would have been had I done the route I did. Is there some luck involved? Sure, of course. But anyways, backtracking, I basically worked for a few months, saved up my down payment because I was going to be house hacking the property. From there, because I was house hacking, my living expenses were basically nothing. Or they were completely subsidized. I didn't have a mortgage because it was covered by a roommate. And this was while my wife was still finishing her last year of undergrad. She did the full 4 years because she did the dual degree. I did 3 years because I had a bunch of credit that I took advantage of, and I just wanted to be done with the degree as quickly as possible. Not that I didn't like college; it was great, but I had other missions to fulfill, we'll say. I knew right out of undergrad my number one goal was to get into a property as quickly as possible. A good deal, of course, which took a while. I searched the whole summer looking for a great deal and eventually settled on the condo that we still own and now is a full rental. So that's kind of how that started. I assume that answers the question. I would just say, you say you're 16, so you've been thinking about this sort of stuff for a while. That's a lot earlier than I learned about real estate. I first kind of came across the idea of real estate investing at age, I think I was 18. Yeah, it was the winter of my first year of university. That's when I first learned about real estate investing, and I was hooked. I was like, whoa, what is this? Because I had never thought about real estate in that way before, really just about investing in general. Coming out of the school system, I always did well in school. And I was looking for answers like, okay, so I did really good in school. And if I go the law route, which I was thinking about for a while, what's the most I can make as an attorney? And like even the top tier attorneys, like the best in the world, might be making $500,000 to $1 million a year. And that's a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But it just didn't add up because, okay, these guys are making, this is like cream of the crop, top tier. Then you compare that to guys like Warren Buffett, or these mega billionaires. I'm like, what's the difference? Like they weren't just being attorneys for their whole life and now they're here. They did something different. And that's why I started learning about investing and realized the power of compounding, of course, and all the great things that you hear about all the time in this investing YouTube space. And that's where I stumbled across real estate investing as well. In particular, that really spoke to me. Though now I've taken a liking to stock investing too. That's kind of how I got going. The fact you're starting at 16, I think, is extremely advantageous because now you can be extra careful going if you're trying to go for like a professional route for school, which is really all I'd recommend school for is if you actually need it. If you don't, unless you get subsidized in a big way, whether that be your parents, the government, or the school itself, then okay, sure, go ahead. But don't just go just to go, especially if you're taking on a bunch of debt. It's really not worth it for that in most cases. You're going to have to apply yourself in any event. The school doesn't do it for you. So what are you paying for? And if you're not paying for some sort of critical accreditation or some critical resources at a school, maybe you're doing like a medical sort of thing, but that would be professional too. Maybe as like an engineer, where you're really getting into a rigorous program that actually is going to help you succeed if you get through it. But there's a lot of just BS degrees out there. As someone who went into history and economics, I love the topics, but you can get by extremely easily in many programs, especially in the liberal arts, where they're passing out A's like candy. So you don't have to do all that much to pass and get a really good GPA. So you have to be very careful on how you approach college and university. If that's something you want to do, you really have to take it seriously. I participated in a lot of organizations during school and focused kind of on the business sort of management leadership skills. I ran the mock trial team, which was like a club of, we had 30 members, 30 by the time I left, or anyway, it was like 20 to 30 members. So it's a lot of people to manage for someone who's never managed before. And that was a really great learning experience too. So it's stuff like that can be super fruitful in school, practicing your speaking abilities, all the great stuff there. But if you don't apply yourself and go for those things, they're not going to do it for you. And you can say that about pretty much any setting. The school maybe makes it easier to do that, but it's still on you to get to go for it. And if you're in an easy degree, it can be easy just to kind of forget about that if you didn't come in with a goal in mind. So ideally that's helpful. You're off to a great start, the fact that you've been thinking about this sort of thing, because now you can be careful when you pick a degree if you're trying to do that, or maybe you don't do it at all. You just go straight into the workforce at 18. It's a fantastic opportunity for laborers right now, seeing as though there's massive amounts of job openings, but not enough workers, because the government is paying a lot of people to not work. And it's, among other things, there are plenty of other issues in the complicated economy that we're in. So you might have some decent opportunities coming right up. Just think about what you want to do. And if you're unsure, just pick something and roll with it for a while. And then you might find opportunities from there. Like, I wasn't really confident I was going to be an attorney going into law school even. I pretty much decided I wanted to be, I decided to go to law school because I got a full ride. If I didn't get a full ride, I probably wouldn't have gone. It's hard to say because I ended up getting one, so didn't really have to worry about the decision. But if I had to pay a bunch of money for law school and I wasn't really passionate about being an attorney, I'd probably think twice. I could always find some other job I'm not passionate about that I don't need that degree for, you know. So that's kind of what I was thinking. And because I got the full ride, it took out so much risk. And then when I ended up doing well in my first year, I had a shot at going for some really good law jobs. I landed the one I'm at now, and it's been great. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't mitigate my risk and keep my options open when I was going into law school. I really wanted to be like some sort of JD advantaged, like real estate investor baller guy, but no one would hire me as an analyst because I wasn't a high class finance major. I was just a lowly econ and history guy. Even though I can work Excel, not like some of these guys, but I know how to use Excel, and no one wanted to take me. So, if anything, I was almost forced. No one forced to do anything, but I was definitely pushed towards the law route, and it's ended up working very well so far. So we'll keep rolling with that. That's just where the most of my opportunities were when it came to starting my career. My skill set was built for it, and a lot of my connections were in the space. So I went for it, and so far so good. So look that sort of way at it. Try to build some sort of roadmap, but don't get too caught up on it if you're not extremely passionate about it. Just try to find something. Worst case, you could always just go for the money route, make as much money as you can in the shortest amount of time, get some financial freedom, and you have some options. That's one way to think about it, but ideally you want to do something that's still going to take some years. So you want to do something that you can at least bear for a while. Anyways, great question. Jamie, are you feeling good about your portfolio lately? Sure. Yeah. I'd like to eliminate some debt in the near future, especially once my wife's out of school and we stop the bleeding with with the student loan burden. Once we can really start focusing a lot more on paying that debt down, I'll feel a lot more comfortable. But as for like my specific holdings, it's been fine. Got got 3 properties now, if you include our house that I'm filming from right now. I've consolidated my stock holdings in a big way into holdings that I have a lot higher conviction towards. So that's getting better by the day, pretty much. Even if they are volatile at times, that's part of the game. So that doesn't really change my conviction in any way. If anything, it might increase it because I can get it at a lower cost basis or something like that. If it goes down, if it goes up, then if anything, that's kind of frustrating if I'm still trying to build a position. But anyways, I feel fine about it. And if I didn't feel fine about it, I would rotate it somehow. Or I'm also kind of focusing on growing it right now by adding a lot of new money towards it. So like I'm not super concerned. I am concerned, but I'm more concerned about building the portfolio basis right now by adding more money to it because that's significant at the moment. Once that portfolio gets a lot bigger and is many times my annual salary at the moment, then that's the portfolio construction I think will mean a lot more than it does now. Granted, I still want to take it very seriously, and because I will get to that point at some point, and I want to have the fundamentals of building that portfolio in that sort of way already built. So, good question, Noah. Just got to be careful not to let emotions get in front of math and probabilities, because that's really what investing is. Thanks, GC. I guess I'll agree. It is it's cool thinking back, and I'm glad I can at least offer some sort of insight. Ultimately, you do whatever you want to do. That's just my personal experience. I'm sure yours will be quite a bit different. Everyone's is going to be different. But any sort of nuggets I can provide, I will do my best. And GC says he's been building into finances since 14. Look at that. Been dabbling in the stock market, but my goal is to build assets and cash flow like you. Great, fantastic. And that's not unique to me at all. There are lots of great investors out there that are much more successful than I am at the moment, and probably for quite some time. There's a lot of great people you can learn from in the stock space, in the real estate space, in even the crypto space. Granted, that's very speculative right now, so you have to be careful. But kind of these tried and true methods, you can learn a lot just by studying history. Some of these more speculative sorts of things, you could still use history as a guide, but there's more sort of factors that go into more unknown factors, I suppose, and a lot of fortune telling that you're going to need to figure out how things are going to shape up. But fantastic. Best of luck on your finance journey. Greg asks, how are you structuring your investment property deals? Do you have them in some kind of legal structure? Do you take them out in your own name, jointly with my wife, etc.? Big fan. Thanks. Well, thank you, Greg. So I have 2 properties in my name, my primary residence and my former primary residence, which I bought using owner-occupied financing, so it had to be in my name. And then I have my property in Indianapolis, which I bought as a straight-up rental, and that is in an LLC, which is actually within another LLC. So I have like an umbrella LLC, and I have an LLC that owns, I have an LLC that owns the property, and then I have an umbrella LLC that is the manager of that property level LLC. So and that allows me to scale longer term while keeping my assets protected. Your structure might differ, of course. So talk with an attorney. I'm not your attorney, even though I am one, because I don't know your exact situation. But that can be something that's something that a lot of investors do. They'll have like an umbrella LLC and then multiple property level LLCs, or maybe you don't even have that umbrella level one. You'll just have a just property level ones. That works too. Whatever makes the most sense. It'll kind of depend on how you want to structure it. The reason we did the umbrella style is because my wife and I are the joint owners of the first LLC, the umbrella one that will own all of the property level ones, because that's where we kind of laid out all the ground rules, like all the how we were to split things. If we want to sell off part of the business, it kind of lays all that out in one master document. And then the property level ones are much simpler because it's just running the individual property. So that was the reason we did that, just kind of rather than having a massive partnership agreement, essentially. Not that it's massive anyways, but it's more complicated than what a property level one will look like. And it kind of allows for some streamlining of the paperwork and the legal documents that would go behind something like an LLC. If you're just a sole owner, it might be a bit simpler, but if you're looking to scale it, if you're looking to sell at some point, if you're looking to add partners, it might make sense to do something more like that. So yeah, that's what I did there. And then I doubt I will transfer these properties that I bought using owner-occupied financing, because if I do transfer them, that could trigger what's called a due on sale clause, which you have to be very careful doing something like that. If I have a mortgage in my own name, but I own this property in my name, and then I transfer the property into an LLC's name, now all of a sudden I don't own the property, the LLC does, but the mortgage is still in my name. And the mortgage has something called a due on sale clause in 99.9% of cases, which means that the lender would have the right to call my mortgage due, because I don't own the property anymore, and therefore the collateral is technically messed up. You definitely want to talk to a lender before you do anything like that, because some will be more friendly to it, others won't. Got to be very careful in any event. So I'm not planning on doing that anytime soon. Because I do want to keep this financing. You don't get this low 30-year fixed rate, low interest financing typically with investment properties, but you do get them with owner-occupied loans. So I want to ride that for a long time. Don't want to squander that if I don't have to. So yeah, just be careful of that if that's something you're considering doing. I know a lot of people talk about doing that. It's a lot of loan documents are pretty explicit about the consequences you might face if that happens. So just be careful is all I'll say there. And talk with your lender, talk with an attorney to kind of weigh your options there. But good question. And Brian says, masters are a complete waste of time and money unless you need them for your field. It depends on the masters you're doing. It really depends on the school. And once again, it depends on how you take advantage of the time at the school you're at, the resources of that school that you are using yourself. But yeah, definitely don't expect just because you have a master's, all of a sudden you're incredible. Because like many degrees, there's master's inflation too, where they're handing out degrees like candy sometimes. You got to make sure you really make the most out of a program. Some programs are definitely better than others. So lots of things to consider when you're making that sort of investment, because it's not only money. In some cases, you might get scholarship money, but also time is a huge resource that you're pouring into this degree. Maybe you can't work during that time, or at least not as much. So you're sacrificing salary there. So you got to weigh all these sorts of things, and don't assume that, oh, I don't know what I want to do, therefore I'm just going to go get a master's. That's what a ton of people do. I think that's the worst mistake a lot of people make out of undergrad. They're already $100,000 in debt, and then they're going to be like, well, I'm going to go get a master's now because I don't know what to do. Maybe they don't even admit that, but they realize that they're unemployable with their current degree, or not unemployable. They're not going to get the $100,000 per year job that they wanted, and they're actually only going to make 40. So they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll go to get a master's and ride it out that way. I think that's a huge mistake, because you're just allowing the student loan interest to compound. Well, maybe not now because it's an interest rate freeze, but you're just making it more expensive. Don't make the mistake. If you did make a mistake, don't make it more expensive. Jump on it and try to solve it. Get a job working somewhere, start paying down that loan, and just face the facts that maybe you didn't use your time as well as you could have during school. And there's always a chance that just you fall in hard times with the economy and there's not as many jobs. It's not really a problem right now, but just don't take anything for granted, and don't assume that masters will suddenly solve all your problems, especially if you're just going to be doing the same exact thing during a master's and not really making the most of it, not connecting with people, not actually trying to build your skills towards whatever career it is you want. You got to take these things seriously. Let's get back to, there's one other question here on this post from a while back. I'll get back to the chat in a second. Bryson Pride asks, a longtime supporter of the channel now. I've seen him around on a lot of videos, so thank you. Do you have a detailed renters packet to communicate what you want them to do? I forget, I asked for clarification. For my own rentals. How do you keep your renters from not destroying the place or calling you for simple things? I've seen people put in maintenance reminders to replace batteries and alarms, only use certain products for cleaning, etc. So I do have my own. I actually wrote my own lease. Well, sort of. I copied a form and then made edits to it for one of my properties. But then since that's my former primary residence that I just rented out, but I've turned that over to property management since then. It was a little bit awkward since I leased the property myself because it was right across the street, and I was getting everything set up while I was looking for a manager at the same time. So I just decided to do the leasing myself. I probably won't do that again, but it just made sense at the time. I have my own lease set up. It was a little bit awkward when it was leased, but I had been the main point of contact the whole time, and now all of a sudden I'm trying to tell them, all right, don't talk to me anymore. Talk to the new manager. It can be a little bit awkward, especially if the manager doesn't reply in 30 seconds. They might go to me next. So you just have to be careful with that. Ultimately, it comes down to setting up boundaries early. In this case, the person just moved in, and I've emphasized a couple of times, like, management knows best. They're going to be the ones on top of problems. They're going to be the ones that can help you. So go to them first. Don't go to me. I can't help you because they're the ones with the keys. I mean, I have keys too, but but they're the ones that actually manage. They're managing the property. Sign a management agreement so they could do it. And it's much better now. But you just have to don't allow for an opening. If I were just to continue being super responsive and being like, yes, let me help you with that you're just digging yourself further into the hole. Just be like, even if you know the answer, just be like, you can acknowledge, like, okay, yeah, I understand. Please ask management. They can help you with that. Just direct them towards wherever you want them to go, within reason, of course. If it's a total emergency, maybe, then jump on it. But yeah, setting boundaries early is super important. As for my Indianapolis property, I did not write that lease. I actually inherited the first lease because the tenant was already in there. Where it's actually looking like we might be evicting that tenant. Actually, I'll keep you posted on that. But that tenant's been in the property for about 1.5 years since we've bought it. So it's been okay. I'll reveal some more details in the future, but that will be spending some of our reserve money towards eviction. It looks like. In the next month, probably. So anyways, that is the management company's lease that's there, and they're running all that day-to-day stuff. I have no contact on the leasing information for, I didn't do any of the leasing for that property. That's all through the management company. So it's been their connection the whole time. So I don't really have to worry about anything there. And I only have to spend a few minutes per week at most, pretty much, maybe a little bit more with the current issues we're having, but even then, it's really not a big headache. Since I have the system set up, management takes care of it. We're on the same page on things, and yeah, that's about it. Getting on the same page, which goes for your manager and for the tenant if you're managing yourself, and then also making sure to set boundaries. Even if you can put it in your lease, say like, the way at least I have my lease, it might be different from state to state, but I have the actual lease itself, and then there's like a rules and regulations section, the rules section that's separate from the lease that can be like that can be changed. It's more like guidelines, like don't pour oil down the drains, or don't what I'm really trying to say is you can word your leases in certain ways where you could be like, hey, you can't smoke alarms are your responsibility. You check your local laws, of course, because it might be different for what you're allowed to do, but stuff like that. You can put some of these things that you're really worried about that might be annoying. Just be like, yeah, this stuff is your responsibility to take care of. If you don't take care of it and it gets worse, then you're on the hook. Stuff like that. Within reason, of course, you can't be ridiculous about it. But yeah, things like replacing batteries and smoke alarms. Don't destroy your drains by pouring stupid things down it. Stuff like that you can put in. A lot of that does come down to local laws, though. So it might be worth hiring if you're trying to write your own leases, hiring a landlord-tenant attorney. They can help you there. Or you can ask if you have a management company, ask them for their lease and see what it says, and ask if you can add something to it. Most likely you can, but yeah, it'll depend on what they want to do. But that is a good question. It's kind of one of the more intimidating things, and it's hard to really know until you dive into it. But yeah, setting boundaries. If you give a mouse a cookie, they're going to keep coming back for more. So just set your boundaries, because it goes both ways. they are your customer, your tenant, so you want to take care of them, but you also don't want to let them abuse you, which there's always most tenants are not that way, but there's the occasional one that does. As someone who worked in property management for a while, there's 20% of the tenants give 80% of the problems. Most are totally fine, but there's the few that are very annoying. So, and you want to set those boundaries, otherwise they're going to keep asking for more and more and more and more. And if you keep caving, then it gets bad. And that goes for paying rent as well. If you allow a tenant to pay rent 2 weeks late every month, they're going to keep doing it, because that's just the routine you set up. You can't let that start. Just be like, nope, you have to pay rent on the 1st or the 3rd or whatever your lease says. You got to pay it by then. If not, we're going to file for eviction. You can't let these things stretch out, because they will. They can open, the other party can only take what you give, pretty much. The law, thankfully in the U.S. at least, laws are pretty they're pretty mature in that you have some certainty there. Things got kind of thrown for a loop in 2020 with all the court shutdowns, but if someone breaks the lease, whether it be landlord or tenant, you typically have some recourse in either direction. So that's helpful to always know you could fall back on that at some point, but obviously the goal is never eviction or anything like that. The goal is to find amicable solutions in any event. So yeah, but good question nonetheless. See some more questions in the chat. It's lively in here. Fantastic. GC, back at it again. In terms of going to university, my parents are telling me to go as they both went. Thinking of going for a business degree, to be honest, still not 100% certain though. I don't know what advice I can give you here. My brother and I, my parents, so my mom got a degree. She self-funded her college, and my dad did not finish, but they both did go to college. And it was never like pushed on us, like you got to go to college. I think they kind of assumed we were. At least that's how it was in my high school. We went to a very good high school in the north suburbs of Chicago, very expensive in tax terms, property tax terms. So it was kind of the expectation of all my classmates, at least, that I think 90% of the school goes to college, which I know is not the case for some schools, depending where you're from. Granted, a lot of people get degrees now, so it's not as special as it might have been 40 years ago. I don't know what to tell you there, because I'm very much against pushing. Thinking of myself as a future father, I'm totally against pushing my kids towards college, unless I think it's something that they actually want and they're just looking for guidance. And sure, yeah, okay, if they want to be an attorney, in order to be an attorney, you have to go to law school. That's how the rules are, for better or for worse. If you want to be a doctor, you have to go to med school, for better or for worse. So in that case, you'd be like, yeah, okay, here's the best way to get to that. But if you don't want to go to school, if my kid didn't want to go to school and it wouldn't make any sense for them, if based on their goals, then yeah, why would I push them to do that? It's time intensive. It's potentially very monetarily expensive too. So I don't want to push people to do that. I don't know what your relationship is like with your parents. If you do want to go for something, if you do want to actually go to school, then yeah, go for it. I would say if your parents are keen on you going, you'd have to present some sort of alternative to them. If you're just saying no, I don't want to go, and you don't give them a real reason, or you're like, this is actually what I want to do, then it's probably not gonna be as effective. As you get closer to the day of reckoning, you might have to. I think it also depends on what can you do when you're 18 or whenever they expect you to go to school. At some point, your parents aren't responsible for you, and you got to take some responsibility for yourself. And that's a double-edged sword. That means that they really don't have as much influence over you if you don't want them to. When you're 16, it might be a bit hard to say no to your parents when they're paying for you. But if you're 18 and you can move out, you can get your own job. You have some, that is an option technically. I don't know I don't know your relationship with your parents is like, so you got to be careful there. You don't want to burn bridges. Of course, they are your parents, and ideally you would love them, and they love you. So just food for thought. I'm kind of spitballing right now. Just realize that there are other options. If you don't want to go to school, present another option, and maybe they'll listen to it. And if they don't, well, it's a tough battle, I suppose. And if they don't want to have skin in the game, then is it really their choice? If they want to pay for it, okay, I'll listen to what you want me to do. If they don't want to pay for it, yeah, that's too bad. I appreciate your support through my life thus far, but I don't want to do that. Sorry if you guys can hear this honking. I don't know what's going on outside. To this degree point, GC says, I get that they're looking out for me, but I know people pursue degrees and then end up at KFC or McDonald's. Yeah, that's a lot of the people who go because they feel obliged to, but don't actually get much out of it. They don't push themselves. It sounds like GC, you have some focus. Okay, this honking is ridiculous. Sorry if you guys can hear this, but if you man, I just lost my train of thought. It sounds like you're a focused individual. I think you'll do well because you seem to have some idea of what you want to do, which a lot of people don't. They just go to school expecting to like discover something, and all they do is just drink half the time. So like you're not going to get much out of that. Even if that's fun, you can have fun on a much cheaper budget than $30,000 a year. Whatever it is for you, wherever you're trying to go. If you're going to like a big school in the States, it's probably what you're paying per year between tuition and room and board. It's not cheap. And Greg, back to this sort of degree, people often forget to weigh opportunity costs of lost wages when going to get something like a master's in an undergrad for that matter. And people often have very lofty expectations of what they'll actually earn out of school. You really should not assume, like for my case, I went into law school. I assumed I was not going to get a big law job. I ended up getting a big law job, so it's like a huge bonus because it's a way bigger salary than the job I might have expected to get. So it's like, great, now I can pivot from there. But you can't go in. This is ridiculous. This person doesn't like me live streaming, I guess. Someone must be blocking the alley back there or something. You can't be entitled. You can't think you're entitled to some job, especially one that pays you a lot of money, because there aren't that many of them. And ultimately, you're relying on someone else to hire you. And it's up to them to hire you. It's not on you. This is where starting something like a side hustle where you have a lot more control over it and you can actually put your blood, sweat, and tears into it and maybe produce some result. There's a risk of failure too. But don't expect someone else to just pay for you just for existing. You have to perform for someone if they're going to pay you a lot of money. In most cases, in some cases, maybe you can take someone for a ride, but pretty much always you're going to have to produce at a pretty high level if you're trying to make some huge salaries. So don't assume that you're just going to get one by stumbling through a fairly easy degree. But that's in addition to sort of the opportunity cost. So make realistic assumptions is really all we're trying to say. All right, I've got a few more minutes for it to get back at it. Back to GC. In terms of house hacking, would you recommend going for a small property, a duplex, or I guess like a larger one, 4 to 5 bedrooms? This is totally market dependent and kind of what's available, and also price point, and also what you can afford. So thankfully with house hacking, you have options. Like you can house hack a single family home, you can house hack a duplex, you can house hack up to 40 units, kind of the limit for house hacking, because that's when you lose that amazing financing, at least in the States. I can't really recommend it one way or another. It also depends on your preference. Are you really valuing privacy? Then maybe a duplex would be a lot better than sharing bedrooms. But if you're, college age and don't have a significant other that's living with you, so you can scrap it a bit, then great. Go for something where you're renting out every bedroom, renting out the couch, and pack as many people into the house as possible. Go for it if that's what you want to go for. So it's a lifestyle preference. It's a financial question. It's an inventory question. what's out there. If there are no multi-units out there in your market, then just because of how it's been built, then it's going to be hard to find one. But it might be very easy to find a well-priced condo or a well-priced single family that's laid out well for house hacking. So it's a market question. But run the numbers either way, and you'll have a good answer. Greg, have you established your FIRE number? What would you like to see what would I like to see in terms of after-tax monthly income to consider yourself free? I'd like to see all the dollars, but my number is kind of how I let off. I think you came in halfway through the stream, Greg, but I'm going for $30,000 per year in really 2018 dollars, so whatever that is now. that's kind of my main goal. And it'll probably be quite a bit more than that by the time I really consider myself comfortable. But that's kind of the baseline. All right, we can cover expenses if you can live in a decent house or apartment or whatever it may be, and pay for basic expenses. We keep our expenses quite low and we still live comfortably. Once we have kids, that number will probably climb a bit, but kids are really more time expensive rather than dollars until they become 18 if you want to pay for their school, which as we were just getting at. I'm not really I still have mixed feelings on how I want to approach that, but hey, we got years from now. The college system might be wildly different 20 years from now. Anyways, $30,000 is the current target, and it will creep up with inflation at the least, and maybe more if I just kick out the goalposts, which I probably will at some point. But that's the base number we're going for. Yeah, it is different for everyone for your financial freedom number. A couple more questions here. GC and Greg, you guys are on it today. GC, I thought of going global with real estate at any point in the future. Yes, as I was mentioning, once I get past my basic financial independence, I'd start looking to diversify a bit more into other countries for sure. I've at least what I always think of conceptually is having a property in like the Cayman Islands or a very tax efficient place. We went there for our honeymoon, so I really enjoyed it. But having something where you pay a tax up front or something, ideally get some extra passports, just having more defense, more defensive capabilities where if some income stream disappears, I have other options, whether that be moving to another country, whether it be moving the cash flow to another country, essentially. Building my online income, of course, is another way to do that. Lots of different things could happen 30 years from now. So I just want to be prepared to pivot if it comes down to it, and just have those options there and diversify in that way. So yes, I'm definitely thinking global, probably start with some tax efficient place, and yeah, go from there. But that's probably more like a decade from now before that really makes any sense. John, how has the transition been from law school to actual employment? Well, I was working during law school, so it wasn't much of a transition. I don't know. It's great now that I'm making significant money. Whereas, when during that year between working and doing school full time, and so I worked during my first year and a half really, and then for the next year of law school, I did full-time school, so I wasn't making nearly as much. And that was a little bit stressful because you're really scraping by. We were never at any threat of danger, but it was just annoying, like knowing that I wasn't making massive progress towards my goals. But now that I'm actually working as an attorney, it's great. I'm not doing law school for free. It's making actual income. That's all the work is now worth something. I'm working on actual deals. So it's been a lot better. I enjoy it way more than school. And I can make more progress with my other goals outside of school too. I saw school as much more of a barrier than an opportunity. The opportunity comes after school. Granted, you build a lot of those opportunities through your connections during school, but I digress. It's been good. And thankfully, it was relatively smooth, all things considered. With the pandemic, I was a little worried I wasn't going to actually keep the job, or something was going to happen to it. But I was able to start in March of this year on a part-time basis while I was waiting for my bar results, since I graduated in December. So I didn't have to wait till May either, especially when school went virtual. I was not going to take the whole year. I was like, I'm doubling my credits and finishing this fall, rather than stretching it out to the spring doing virtual law school. It was very, I don't want to say it's terrible, but it was not good compared to in-person law school or actually meeting people on the daily. Anyways, it's been good. I said, how are you in the Cayman Islands? Lucky to have me. My wife is. We actually paid for that with credit card points. So travel hacking is real, and it's awesome. I actually just got 100,000 points with the Chase Sapphire Preferred. So that's exciting. We'll take some other trip. I think we're aiming for maybe an anniversary trip in next August. Once we'll see where the pandemic status is at. I'm not exactly bullish on things being much different, but hey, we'll see. You never know what the future will hold. We'll definitely take a trip at some point, though, using those points. Or maybe other points that we get. There's my man, Christian. He edits many of the videos, the vast majority, on the channel. When is the new set ready? So I need to get some props for my basement. You guys have probably seen some of the videos with I have like the musical posters in the background. My wife's a big singer, so we wanted to decorate that way. I think it looks pretty cool, but I don't know if it's conducive for a set because you can see the light reflecting on it. So I'm buying a new light. Lighting is quite expensive if you want like the high class stuff. And I also need to get a few things to decorate the desk I'll have down there. It's actually my old desk that I had at my old place. I've moved that to the basement. Everything was delayed because of the basement flood we had, so that was no fun. But it's coming soon, Christian, I promise. Christian's an expert on videography, lighting, and he's been super helpful for learning the game. I think I'll wrap it up there. Now that we're over an hour, thank you everyone for stopping by. Be sure to subscribe again so you don't miss future updates. And also, I'll make posts every now and then asking for questions. So if you by chance can't make the live stream, leave a question in there, and I'll do my best to answer it in the next live stream whenever that happens. So yeah. Otherwise, if you like this video, got any value out of it, just enjoyed being here. Appreciate those of you who've been on for pretty much the whole time, looking at you, GC, and Greg, and others. Thanks everyone for stopping by, and until next time.